friendly reminder, this is a horror movie so terrifying, even ghost spirit. From the master of horror, James Wan, it's the first in a series that's the peak of American horror. Ready? The film starts with a soul-snatching ritual. An incapacitated person wears a mask, and soul-seeing assistants use headsets to detect magnetic field changes. Then, a man calls the soul's name, making our hearts race. A shrill scream echoes, and suddenly, a demon seizes the boy's body, flipping tables and tossing the boy's father into a corner. The demon's terror was unimaginable. It began when the family moved into their new home, hoping for a fresh start. That night, Handsome sat alone, playing. But that night, while Handsome played upstairs with his mother Lai, the door next to him opened slowly, as if magically inviting him. In the dead of night, Handsome took a light bulb and approached the door in wonder. He looked around the attic and found something. As he grew stronger and more curious, he climbed the staircase, reaching up to hook it. Then the staircase cracked, and Handsome fell. He saw a ghostly figure in the darkness. Mr. and Mrs. Saw ran to check it out, and Mr. and Mrs. Avi followed. But when they got to the attic, they found nothing there, and their son was only slightly injured. The couple didn't care, and they went downstairs with their son in their arms. But just as he was leaving, he suddenly realized that there was a box in the corner. Strangely, they didn't put anything in the attic when they moved in, so how is there an extra box? What's even stranger is that after coming down from the attic last night, Handsome suddenly got seriously ill. He was pale, collapsed, and slept for 3 months. During this time, they took him to the hospital several times, but all his tests were normal, and he didn't look sick. What was wrong with Handsome? They were so anxious they couldn't focus on work. Even his younger brother, while sleeping, had a recent episode. Every night, he heard strange footsteps in his room, and when he woke up, they disappeared. Seeing his brother unconscious in bed terrified him, so he carefully closed the door. But as soon as he did, the footsteps returned. Now, my brother was so frightened that he dared not breathe. He rushed into the nest and told his mother about the incident. Upon hearing this, Liza couldn't help but wonder why Handsome, who had been unconscious, would be walking around in my brother's room. She rushed to tell her husband about the incident. But Wei didn't think so and said it was just a child's imagination. How come? Just as soon as the flowers had fallen, there was an urgent knocking on the door and Wei went downstairs to look for a clue and looked for half a day, but there was no one there. So they locked the door and went upstairs to sleep. But as soon as they got back to their room, the alarm sounded in all ears and the door they had just locked opened again. Now, Wei couldn't sit still anymore. He immediately picked up an iron bar and walked cautiously through the door until he was sure that there was no one in the living room. Only when he was sure that there was no one in the living room did he finally close the door, and that's how the Yi family had spent the frightening night. But they didn't know that it was just the beginning. This day, early in the morning, while changing her unconscious son's diaper, Lisa accidentally noticed a massive bloody handprint at his feet, as if someone had tried to pull him away. Seeing this, Lisa couldn't help but recall the terror she had faced the night before. Last night, after Wei went downstairs, a cry suddenly filled Lisa's ears. She thought it was the cry of a little girl, so she anxiously went to check on her daughter. But as soon as she stepped into the room, she saw an ugly handprint on the back of the curtain window. However, when she entered the house, she saw a ghostly figure behind the curtains, which frightened her greatly. Seeing the bloody handprints in front of her eyes, she couldn't help suspecting that something sinister might be living in this building, otherwise, there wouldn't be so many bizarre occurrences. Therefore, she and her husband discussed the need to move out of the house as soon as possible. She thought such strange events wouldn't happen again, but the room was even stranger than before. On the very first day she moved in, Lisa was throwing away the garbage and was so worried she couldn't help but think of her daughter, inadvertently. Seeing another strange child in the room, she rushed into the room and the child disappeared in a flash. Liza was so puzzled as to how this could have happened after she had moved out of the house, but while she was puzzled, the door beside her closed again, and the child passed by in a flash. Liza followed the child's trail and carefully passed by, only to see a wooden horse swaying for no apparent reason, and the child was also a strange child. The strange child disappeared again, and Liza became even more frightened, but the door behind the horse opened with a bang, and Liza rushed to the door, sensing that something was hiding inside, so she grabbed a stick and went through the door, scared and afraid. Observing the peculiar child and hearing the swift footsteps echoing in her ears, Lisa finally understood that all of this was the reason behind the world's horror. Instead of stopping the weirdness, it got worse. So she and her husband considered hiring an exorcist to check for anything evil in the building. That person was the white-haired woman from the movie's start, Auntie Mui, a top-notch exorcist with yin and yang faces who can connect with spirits and has caught many demons. She went to another room, told her assistant not to turn on the lights, and saw the unconscious Xiao Shui possessed by a demon. The demon was hiding on the beams, so she called her assistant and drew the demon based on her own description. You could have seen the wolf's eyes during the crash. Aunt May told him something shocking. Lisa was healthy and rushed to see the result, almost scaring her to death. It wasn't the first time he saw the ghost shadow. How could it follow here? But after Aunt May's search, the matter ended. She told his wife and husband that Handsome hasn't woken up not due to illness, but due to natural astral projection, also known as soul trouble. Handsome thought he was traveling, but his soul had left his mind and was drifting in depressing space. His soul went further away and was targeted by evil spirits, causing frequent strange events. Luckily, they found out in time, or evil spirits would have dragged Handsome's soul to hell. Additionally, Mei informs them that the only way to end the ongoing suffering is by conducting a soul summoning ceremony for Handsome, to bring back his soul from the otherworldly realm. If they don't, the evil demon lurking within him will become even more uncontrollable. Thus, the Yoshinobu hurry to conduct the soul summoning ceremony for Handsome. As the ceremony advances, strong winds blow, thunder rumbles, and lightning strikes. In a sudden flash of lightning, the evil demon is finally revealed. It slapped the assistant, sending him flying over 10 meters. Mei quickly got up, pressed Handsome's forehead, and commanded the demon inside to leave immediately. With the demon departing from Handsome's body, everything was finally restored to a temporary peace. Mei also took this chance to contact Y's mother. Y was puzzled as to why he suddenly called his mother to this place, but then Auntie Mei shared an incredibly shocking story with him. The reason that little Handsome turned out this way is because he inherited Wei's unique system. During his childhood, Wei would sometimes experience unexpected and unexplained sporadic soul movements, leading to a variety of unusual occurrences. Even while taking photos of her son, she could distinctly notice a ghostly shadow hovering around him. However, as these bizarre events became increasingly evident, she began to truly believe that her son was being haunted by a malevolent spirit. To rescue her son, she sought Auntie Mui's help to conduct a soul-searching ceremony for Y, aiming to seal both his memory and special abilities. Only by bringing back the family could the calamity be averted. Therefore, Y had no choice but to heed Aunt May's advice and sit down in a deep trance. Averic followed Mei, carrying a lamp. "Let my voice be heard, and let us continue to walk to you, far, far away." Avi immediately followed Mei with a bright lamp. She stepped cautiously into the darkness. However, no sooner had she entered a room than an evil spirit in a wedding gown flashed past her. Vi rushed after her, but the further she went, the more evil spirits appeared before her. There were more weeping women in the corners, more flashes of children, and more deathly stillnesses in the rooms. Even the parlor had 3 evil spirits with ashen faces, where time seemed to have sunk into the depths, and where there was a pervasive fearfulness, and where the world seemed to have collapsed. Thus, Avi was carefully moving about, searching for his son. But then, the sound of a gunshot suddenly rang out in his ears. He followed the sound back to the living room, only to find a spray gun in the hands of the demons who had been motionless. Wei was so scared that he ran away, but he ended up here by mistake. In front of the colorful door, he guessed that his son might be inside and rushed forward, but the next moment, a terrible demon appeared again and rushed up to him and fell down on him, while in the real world, he began to struggle uncontrollably. Auntie Mei guided him with her voice, and only then did he finally break free from the demon's grip, and with a punch, he sent him flying out of the room, and then he opened the red door of the inner room, and passed through the dimly lit corridor, and found him inside, where he had been taken by Auntie Mui. Inside, he found his trapped son, but no sooner had he unchained him than he was startled, as if he had seen something terrible. Then he looked back in confusion, not realizing that behind him was a blood-red demon, who came up beside him and knocked him to the ground, and before he recovered, the demon struck again, and with a slap, he sent him flying, and this time it was a great deal worse than that, for it was a great deal worse than that. Even their house started to shake with great force, and when Y couldn't fight, he had no choice but to grab his son and flee. However, the road was dark and eerie, filled with the cries of the saints. As the ghostly shadows grew more numerous, the house shook violently once more, and the lights went out. Just in time, Liza rushed to guide the 2 men with her voice, helping them find their way back through the evils. As the room became quieter, Aunt May realized that Y was nearly back, but then the room began shaking again, and a very strange sound echoed in every corner. As soon as the door of the house was opened, the evil spirits appeared behind the kitchen. They could only close the door quickly, and then the lamps in their hands kept illuminating Y's body, so that the terrible spirits that kept appearing couldn't pass through him to the real world. Finally, Liza came to her husband quickly, calling for his speedy return. However, Y opened the door of the house with his son, and saw in the mirror the evil spirits that had haunted him. The devil, Avi, had finally returned to the real world, and their son had woken up. But things didn't seem to end there, and as Auntie May was about to leave, she suddenly noticed something in Avi, and picked up the camera and clicked on it. But this scene infuriated Avi, and he instantly strangled Auntie May, in a fit of rage. When Lisa realized something was wrong, she came to see Auntie May lying on a sofa, pale and white, and her husband nowhere to be found. Where was he? He searched and found just a camera. I must say, Alan Wynn's horror films are excellent. Even without high-powered cameras, they capture the horror atmosphere perfectly. The horror master is truly famous. That's all for today's story. I'm Yasser Arafat. Subscribe for more interesting horror videos. See you next time.